Welcome to VEGGIE'S game-changing podcast. I'm excited, I'm thrilled, and I'm beyond happy. All those words mean the exact same thing, but it doesn't matter. I'm ecstatic to bring you this new project that I've been sort of, I'm going to say dreaming about, but not quite dreaming about. I've been excited and looking forward to bringing this to this platform and kind of using it to sort of teach myself a lot more about the scene as well. But we will get into more about what we're going to be discussing and what it all is. But first of all, I'm going to introduce myself. So my name is Veggie Hotdog, aka Veggie. I'm a play-by-play and Valorant analyst at times. I've done a little bit of work for the Goose House, worked for Lions Creed. So AVG was my first cast back in September last year, and I've been really enjoying learning into the Valorant scene, as casting wasn't something that I've done, and I've enjoyed literally every single minute of it so far, which is why I've continued doing it. Now, how did I get to this point where I am today, wanting to make this about game changers? So, I was lucky enough to be asked to join the Goose House for the Birds of Prey event for day one of their whole playthrough, which day two was then covered by Rook and Winter, which they done an amazing job, and the finals was fantastic. But I was lucky enough to be on with Snow, a caster that I worked with at I-70 for the Goose House stage. And when I first got asked to come on for Birds of Prey, I had a previous background of knowing what to expect from the sort of game changer scene, having previously worked on Into the Winter's Den for women in esports and Into the Breach. And I've seen a lot. I've obviously watched the main game changers events previously, and kind of really enjoyed what we'd watched and was intrigued to how the scene was going to start coming up. But what I didn't know at that point, and what I wasn't fully prepared for, I suppose, was to how much I would be engrossed and brought into the passion that has been shown by everyone involved in this scene. And it kind of got further made along by that, kind of coming off of Birds of Prey. I was lucky enough to be asked to present and cast for Sultai Esports with the Sultai Sirens team in their Contender series, which was over 3 days, and it's something that will be talked about in this episode. We have a little special treat coming up, which we'll talk about a little bit further on. But it further piqued my interest, and I got to see some more people and talk to more people in that scene, and it really brought a new light to what I wanted previously. Done some work on a show called The Analysts with one of my other presenter and analysts, EKOCASTS, but it's always been centred around VCT, EMA, and I wanted to bring something that I could learn from myself and present that to you with focusing on the game changer scene. So that is what this is. So now that I've covered myself off, like I said, I've pretty much covered what my next topic was going to be, of what the whole purpose of this podcast is, and it's going to be to sort of learn and discuss the game changer scene and competition, upcoming players, coaches, and all that sort of stuff Valorant related. But as much as it's going to be for myself, I want to give something that you might not see on other platforms. So we'll be having interviews with coaches, like I said, players, all that sort of good stuff. And I'll be taking as much from it as I intend to give back. So I do want to learn as much as possible in the scene, and I want that to come across on this, so that if you're listening to this, you can also get that information. You might be watching this knowing that information. But I also want to talk results, competitions, predictions, all that sort of good stuff that you get in any typical Valorant podcast. So without further ado, we're going to begin today's podcast, and we're going to head off to today's special treat. We have an interview with the one and only EKO. So enjoy. Hello, we have an amazing interview here with the one, the only EKO, the current coach of WRAITH, play-by-play caster and observer for Valorant. Welcome, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm good, thank you. It's been a good day. And obviously get to talk to you for a little bit, which is obviously going to be amazing.
The downer at the end of the day has come. You've just worked through 8 hours of shift, and now you get to be here.
Perfect. What else could you want?
Thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate you being the first ever guest on VEGGIE'S Game Changing Podcast. So it means a lot. And you know, we start at the top. We get the best of the best on straight away, and I'm excited to pick your brain. But it's kind of first off, before we go in, do you want to tell us kind of how you found your way into esports and kind of where you are specifically?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I started out in an absolutely awful university team for Overwatch. I was maybe high silver, low gold at the time. Awful. Loved playing. Did not know how to do it. I was like it was just like I was a Lucio that just ran around on the floor the whole time. It was just not good.
Okay. Right.
I watched some casters cast over. I think we were in Null or something. They casted over our game. I didn't like the way of casting. I was like, I can do that better. So then I went and tried to do it. Started casting, started managing teams, and then a couple of friends and I started to host our own little draft league for Valorant when Valorant came around. And we picked out captains, they picked out teams, and every week I would do a VOD review of one of the games that was in the league. So each of the teams it was just kind of a round robin thing. They'd all play each other, and I do a VOD review for each team over the course of the tournament. And I loved it, and I think I was pretty good at it. So I started trying to do some analyst work, did some coaching, formed a team, left that team, joined Wraith, and here we are.
Okay, nice. So I think last time I kind of spoke to you, you were you weren't fully in. Well, you were a coach at that point, but you were more of a strategy coach, right? And now you're kind of full coach. So that was one of the things I wanted to talk about, like the difference in what your role would be, like. And as a coach, like, because as much as that I want to talk about game changers and the entire scene, I'm also interested in learning a lot more about esports myself and maybe bringing that across to an audience from that kind of point. So if I do ask questions that are you're just like, you should know this, just roll with it, right? We're educating the millions that are going to be watching this.
The millions,
so, yeah, exactly,
everyone.
Exactly, the whole universe. Just like my mum could be watching this and has to understand what esports is, right? She still thinks it's kicking football about in the park. It's not, right?
There's an E now, Mum. There's an E.
Yeah, exactly. It means we can be indoors, okay? So as a coach, what do you offer to the team, and what is your main values, I suppose?
Right, sure. So I think, like, especially when we look at the difference between strategic coach and coach, right? I think there's a lot of different types of value, kinds of value that a coach can bring. As a head coach, or a lot of times, especially in kind of game changers, as the sole coach of a team, what you do is kind of everything from managing the interpersonal relationships of the players, managing kind of their mentality, how they're feeling in the game, and all that kind of thing, and then along with building strats, building their fundamentals up, their communication, working with the agile to kind of create overall game plans and then communicating that out to the team. There's a lot of education pieces in there as well. A lot of people, I think, all across kind of like tier 2 of main VCT and tier 2 of game changers, I think a lot of these teams come into the kind of team system not knowing what a lot of coaches might class as fundamentals of the game.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's a lot of kind of like education pieces around that to kind of help to build up like the fundamentals of the understanding of the game, but also team fundamentals, like peeking together, playing off of each other, contact plays, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of different ways of bringing value. I know I waffle a bit for
no, it's true.
I think there's a lot. Yeah.
So it's not just like, it's literally not just looking at a map and going, this is how we'd attack it. It is fully a sense of, this is how we play together. If someone's pushing B site looking at Cubby, you need to be ready to trade, or at least checking different angles and stuff, right? That's
exactly. And I think strategic coach more looks at that. If you've got two coaches and one's focused on strats, they look at just kind of the singular aspect of building playbooks. Whereas a head coach, more wholesome view of it.
Okay. Yep. So before we kind of deep dive into a lot of other things, I want to know, you touched on it a little bit of you almost kind of fell into it just by doing your VOD reviews and into your tournaments. But is there any coach at the minute, or specific, maybe not specifically team, but is there anyone that's kind of like your inspiration of like who you look at, their work ethic, or any kind of thing of that way that is?
No, that's a good question. I thought about this before because I was like, you're going to ask me this. But I came back with, in terms of coaching specifically, there's like 7 or 8 different coaches that I really look up to. A lot of them are kind of that what you might view as like unattainable goals of like Potter at EG, kind of like Mini, obviously with Fnatic. That's the top level. Much kind of like closer to the ground, there's like kind of in the tier 2 system, there's a lot of coaches, and in GC, I really look up to Jackson of Nip Lightning, who did some work on some US tier 2 teams last year, moved over to GC, is still living in the US whilst coaching a EMEA team. which is crazy.
The time differences, yeah.
like he wakes up at like 4 o'clock in the morning for himself to then help coach 10 for the teams over in Europe. It's crazy, and the amount of dedication to the team with that time difference, and specifically when I realized I liked Jackson's coaching so much was watching his split. Like the way that Nip played split was amazing. I've had the pleasure of talking to Jackson a little bit, and yeah, absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Fair. I had something to go from that, and now I've just completely forgot about it.
So anyway, I waffled on for too long.
No. It was literally like one of the last things you said, and it's just gone. So you talked about like looking at like how Jackson plays on split, and that's what kind of brought you into that. So would you say that it always kind of, and for my brain, it'll always kind of go back to football terms because that's just kind of how it's worked. So if I go back to football, just bear with me. But like, so a lot of the times you'll have teams that play to counter the opposition, and you have teams that set out to play their own game. So if you look at that in terms of Valorant, like you look at like your EG of they're very anti-strat of looking at like how they beat Cloud9 just by nullifying everything they brought down. Or then you have other teams that are very much like, this is our play style, and teams have to adapt to play for us. What side do you lean to, or do you like kind of a mix of both?
So I try and have quite a good mix. Like as a coach, I try and bring up good fundamentals, good solid game plans that are well drilled, well understood by everyone. I use a lot of silly terminology that I've had to also teach as part of that. But I like anti-stratting is kind of where I came from, and that's where I originally, I think, that the first piece of kind of analytics work that I did for teams was building anti-strats. And saying like, look, this is the tendencies of the other team. This is how we can counter it. So let's destroy them that way. And I love that because I think that's the most satisfying thing as a coach is in calling a timeout, seeing a strat that the enemy team are doing consistently, calling the counter for it in those 60-second timeouts, and then your team just wiping the floor with them. So good.
It's like a nice game of chess, right? You can like see the move been happening, and you're like, actually, we'll do this instead, and then you're just going. It is nice to see, especially when like as me as a caster when I'm watching, or even just as an observer, watch not like actual observer, but like just an audience member, I suppose, watching the games. Like when you see a lot of timeouts, sometimes you just notice that things don't change. But when you have that one click moment and you see exactly what's, maybe not exactly what's been said, but like you can tell there's 100% been an adaptation, and it changes the game. It really is beautiful. Valorant is the easiest way to say it, but we do appreciate it. And I mean, obviously from our interactions before, we do know you as the VOD demon of staying up watching millions of VODs in your travels. So clearly that's something that you do like to go into. Right, my next kind of question, obviously you're still currently at Wraith, who I believe are a free agent team.
Yes. So Wraith's a free agent team.
So my questions that kind of come around that was, how do you, as a coach, adapt to that? Because obviously you don't really have full reign of your players, aren't like contracted to you and such, so there's nothing really, there's no glue holding them in place. Although you obviously have to then be that glue, but how do you adapt to the volatile nature that it could be of losing players and then gaining players that come in?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the trickier things about being a free agent team specifically is, so we had a player leave just after the first kind of open qualities for contenders for GC this year.
Yep.
So we had to kind of like scramble to find someone new for contenders and then solidify their place in I think it was a 2-week gap between the two, maybe a 3-week. It was a very short amount of time. I think to me, this is part of what I do as a coach is, like I talked before about kind of I build up fundamentals for maps. And I use a lot of silly terminology for things, but that terminology, when it's defined, so I have a slide deck, or I have a bunch of slide decks going across a lot of different maps with a lot of different terminology, and like kind of like how the team likes to think about the game and how we think the map should be played. And it's quite easy to then onboard someone into that system when it's all written down, and you can just go, look, here's a dozen slide decks, go and look at these before each scrim, and then we can review afterwards. It's quite a fun challenge as well, because obviously when you got someone leaving to potentially go to a rival team, the same kind of slots as you are, then they know your strats. So this kind of comes into the counter-stratting thing of like, if they know our playbook for, let's say, Fracture, which is one of, I think, Wraith's most shown maps on broadcast at the moment. So if they know our Fracture strats, then I then have to counter what they think the counter might be. to the strat.
Okay.
So that,
Yeah.
if they know we like to, push arcade on a pistol round, for example, then we don't. But if we did,
hypothetically speaking, yeah.
hypothetically, trying to counter what they think they do to counter that, right?
Yeah, of course.
So like using your own pass VODs as bait. That comes into play a lot as well. But we've not had to play any of our past teammates yet, which is good.
Yeah, so it's using proper 4D chess. Yeah.
Yes.
I was kind of rooting for that when it was coming to the later changes of contenders. To be honest, I was like, who are they playing up against? And I was watching the leaderboard go up, and I was like, oh, they could play.
Yeah, we could have.
I was
quite
playing
close.
for it when obviously I was working for Saltire, and obviously you were part of Wraith. I was hoping when we both had a similar kind of start go off to it, I was like, oh, this could happen, and then after like day one, we dropped to news. Obviously, just kept rising. I was like, well, that's it. Moment's gone now. So it's
that would have been so fun, though.
Yeah, it would have been. I would have looked forward to it, but unfortunately, the stars did not align, and it is what it is, right? So we'll segue into that. So obviously, both got to observe. Well, I got to observe, and you got to certainly play a big role in the contender series. How did you feel coming off of that? Obviously, you made it into the playoffs part, and then over onto the main event, but unfortunately weren't able to get past a few teams. I believe we lost to, I'm looking at it just now, Ignite, who actually went on quite far as well.
Yeah.
And lost to Angry Titans as well, who actually Saltire lost it as well. So I know what they can. I've seen their matches and know what they're capable of. But in terms of the tournament itself, how did you kind of get on with that experience?
Yeah, so I think the tournament itself, we came away feeling mostly pretty good. Wraith got top 32 in the open qualies before I joined the team. And they were, that's a solid start. They got put up against a pretty tough side of the bracket. So top 32 they were happy with. Then I think, so Wraith then, after I joined for Birds of Prey, Wraith then lost the old head coach. So a lot of things have shifted. And I think we were hoping, top 24, top 16, top 12 kind of thing. But obviously the stars didn't align that well. We went up against Angry Titans, who, as we said, they are a good team. Yeah. There's a reason Angry Titans signed them. And I talked a bit to Nikki, obviously, of Angry Titans afterwards. And we kind of talked through a lot of things. And I think it was a good matchup. I think we came away from it knowing we could have beat them. But we had a sub, which I'm not to make excuses, but we had a sub.
We would have won otherwise.
I don't think we would have beaten them otherwise. I think they are kind of that level above at the moment, but we came away with plans of how we can then level up our own game to then get to a good point again.
Which is one of the most important parts, right? Is that you can take away from that experience of going, look, X, Y, and Z went really good, but A, B, and C we can maybe start to improve on. And like you said, you've went from top 32, now you've went even higher, and then it's how to push that one onto the next level and hopefully see you guys push into the champions of contenders. That's the next challenge.
Yeah, hopefully.
So season 3, where you're going to be there. I believe. But in terms of the structure, obviously we went through the Swiss format, and then you went Swiss format ended on day 3, and then straight away you were going into the playoffs, it's kind of rough. And I know we spoke off air about it, but even just from prep wise kind of thing, it makes it difficult because you didn't know who you were going up against, right, until like almost 20 minutes before the matchup.
Yeah, so I've said this before and I'll say this again. Swiss is the best beginning format to any tournament, and then going to a double elim bracket afterwards is the best. So Swiss and double elim, best format. The tournament that I ran a couple of months back for Ultra Euro Gaming was Swiss and double elim because it's the best format. And so I think the format itself was great. The structure of the timing was not so good in my opinion. Like I said, 20 minutes. We realized we were up against NASR Ignite, who are an amazing team from MENA. Absolutely amazing team. And it was like, okay, 20 minutes for me to run through their run it back GG and see exactly what I can find on them, rather than, the couple of hours that I'd had on other teams to watch their VODs. It was quite tough. And to go, so NASR went straight from, they had quite a while from their MENA qualifier up into this. They didn't come through the open qualies. So it was it felt quite draining for us to do 2 back-to-back days of three BO1s, then a BO1, and then straight into a BO3. It was draining for sure.
Yeah, it's always one of those things you see, and I see it from presenting, like even on like Birds of Prey, like that's a long day for me. Never mind like the teams that are playing a part of that, and you kind of have to take that into consideration, right? Like some of these tournaments, you see the team playing from like literally 10 hours straight to get into the final. And then it's when you're at that 10th hour, like obviously you start to see the fundamentals fall apart because you get drained. Let's not forget, it is a sport. These people have been playing at what you would hope would be the top of their ceiling for where they are now for that amount of time is difficult, but you somehow manage to pull through and do it. So you have to give props to everyone involved on each side for that, I suppose. So format of it's decent. You are a fan of that. That's what we like to see. The interesting part for me out of coming into Contenders was how far the A team got. And as a free agent team, you have to kind of look at that. And I don't know if for yourself, you look and go, that is the inspiration. Like that's where you want to be, right? Is that as a free agent team, you're always going to, I would think that you're always going to struggle because your players could get picked up and maybe the roster gets picked up elsewhere. But if you can prove that as a unit you can get there, surely
that's always the aim, right? Like we look at people like Untapped, right, up in like the actual like full main event of GC for EMEA, and like maybe they didn't perform as well as they'd hoped to in that season, but then getting there in the first place through the open qualities as a free agent team, beating multiple signed teams on the way, was definitely an inspiration for me. Was seeing them do that. The A team was, I think, one of the best surprises to come out of Contenders to me. Was I thought they looked strong beforehand, but I don't think I realized just how strong they were, and that was like an incredible wow. That is like to me truly like now like wow, that's incredibly done from them. I'd say like another team similar would be Serial Killers. Like they've got Ascend's old coach. Cloud on there. They've got an amazing team stacked up there as well. There's a lot of teams that I kind of look to that are also free agent teams, kind of batting around the same kind of ballpark that we are, that get slightly better results. And it's like, okay, let's learn from them, right?
Yep. So what are they doing right that you can kind of incorporate? Yeah, that's exactly the way to look at it, right? You need to have that growth mindset. You can go and watch a different podcast on growth mindset, but mine's just not the place for that. But it's certainly one of those things that you certainly want to adopt if you are pushing into it. So 100%. So Contenders obviously finishes, and that pushes you into the main event, which is certainly going to be an interesting one. Do you have any sneaky picks or like underdogs that you could suggest might be winning it? I mean, everyone's going to. I mean, maybe not everyone might say G2. I'm going to put my head on a plate here, and I don't know if this is a hot take or not, so you can tell me not. I don't think they've looked as good since coming back off of previous, and I've seen a lot of things talking about this, specifically of how G2 had the LAN experience coming in from like Mary on CSGO, not Mary, sorry, Mimi on CSGO coming in with that LAN experience, and it really forwarded through the teams. And now as such, it seems like other teams are catching up with that. Obviously, there's a lot more, specifically Game Changers competitions. It seems to me, at least, that it's growing massively in not only popularity, but like playability and viewability of everything that's going on. And it does seem like a lot of teams are catching up with that.
Yes, like so that was my view of. So I was doing watch parties for Nip Lightning, for the main series beforehand. After the open qualities, and watching all of the other teams kind of come up through there, and watching like even like teams like K-Corp that have some amazing players that haven't found their kind of footing yet. It feels like all of these, like there's much less of a gap now between the top of GC and kind of like I'd go all the way down to kind of like the top 24. There's much less of a gap between those teams, and I think depending on the day, it really could be one team or another just winning by not chance, but by slightly better preps, slightly better time in the moment.
On the day, kind of anything can happen. It's the same in every sport in that sense. If you've got two very similarly matched teams, it comes down to the coach on the day if the tactics are prepared.
Sometimes,
there's certainly a lot that comes down to it, and you would have that play. So back to the question. We're not dodging it. I want your hot take.
It's really tough, I think, to properly work it out. There's so many teams going to the main event for GC that look absolutely incredible. Obviously, as someone that did the watch parties for NIP, hopefully doing them again, I've got to say NIP, right? But I outside of that, I do think K Corp. I think K Corp have a real shot at kind of taking it to the top. They'd probably be other than the French fans, would probably be considered underdogs outside of France. Obviously, within France, they are the best in the world.
K Corp rule. Exactly.
As soon as I included K Corp in the Twitch title or in tweets, the amount of suddenly impressions that I got was crazy.
Farm easily.
But so I would say K Corp kind of top 2, top 3. Because I don't think they've made any roster moves as well, which a lot of these teams have.
Yep. Interesting. See, I was a fan of Ascend, but I'm going to put my heart on the line here, and that was mostly because of the Scottish player. So, the easiest way to sink Veggie into supporting your team is literally just recruit a Scottish player, and I'm like, I'm in. It's sorted.
Well, Wraith have a Scottish player, so
indeed, yeah, exactly. I believe it's Egg, right?
Yes, it is.
I'm sorted. Yeah, Egg, my Killjoy player. That I think that's one of my favourite clips. Is talking about Egg. But anyway,
that clip was passed around our Discord a lot.
Yeah, I think the best bit was the silence that I got from Snow afterwards, and I was just like, "Come on, man."
It was beautiful casting. So you've done a lot of jokes up to that point anyway,
Yeah, I think I break him down at times whenever I'm casting with him. He's like, I'm sick of this guy. What? Get me off.
But it's good casting. We love it.
It's fun. You've got to be entertaining with it, right? You've got to look at it. Right, I'm going to bring it back to your role because effectively that's why you're here.
Sure.
So when we watch, to be fair, I'll tie this into two sort of parts. So when we watch a game, let's say we watch Fracture, because we all know Wraith love Fracture. It's, if you're going to get 3 things in life, it's death, Wraith playing Fracture, and taxis. Yeah, that's what we're going with, right? But so how much of that game that we would get to see would be your set instructions, and how much of that then becomes to the mid-rounding? And I know that's going to kind of depend, but on a regular game, let's say.
Yeah, so I think for Wraith specifically, maybe not Fracture, because honestly, I joined the team and their Fracture was already outstanding. But so if it's I've done a lot of Pearl stuff, for example. That was my first challenge with the team, was to build that Pearl up, and I think as you saw on the Birds of Prey, our Pearl was pretty good. So if it's a map that I've had a lot of work with the team, a lot of what I'm building at the moment isn't necessarily playbooks. So the team is kind of using Egg is the IGL, the captain, and the Scottish player, obviously. A lot of it is her mid-rounding based on information and ideas that I've brought forward to the team. We've brought forward as a group. We have quite a collaborative environment. And I've I sit down when we start to kind of scrim a specific map, and I break the map up in different sections, what's important, what's less important, and how to take it, how the enemies might want to take it, how we can take it back, and all of these kind of mini protocols of what we want. And then Egg is, in my opinion, the best or the second best IGL that's on an unsigned team in Game Changers. I know I'm going to be biased, but she's absolutely outstanding. And she takes all of these pieces of information that the team give her in the mid-round and then builds a plan off of the areas of the map that she thinks is important at the time and all that kind of thing, based off of what I talked about before. And then we do have a playbook of 1,000 different things that we do on each map that she then picks the best from and then adapts it. So it's a real collaborative effort, I think. But I've been on old teams where, they solely work on strats and playbooks, and that's all they do, and it's just the coach's stuff. And then other teams where it's the exact opposite. So it can really depend on the IGL typically. To kind of delve into that. So
is with an IGL, is that someone that you would typically then spend the most time with? Obviously, it kind of probably makes sense that they are the IGL, but to get their ideas, I know you've previously said that you work really collaboratively as a team, but I suppose it's I might this just be my view, but important to make sure that IGL's on board, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are in the lobby and making the calls mid-round. Obviously, you can't speak while the match is going on. So for them to be on board with you is something that's huge, right?
Yeah, so kind of getting the kind of, I guess, sixth sense between the two of you, if you know what the other's thinking, is it's quite a long journey to kind of get to that point. And I think when it works is when you see teams doing absolutely outstanding, and the timeouts happen, and then the next 6 rounds, not just the next 2 or 3, the next 6 rounds are perfectly played. If that's what happens, then that's perfect. But I think getting to that point is quite tricky. And I'm not one that likes to kind of shut people out of conversations. So if I'm having a strategical conversation with an IGL, I'll try and have it in a public space so that if anyone else on the team wants to join, they can join muted and listen in, and then kind of pitch in if they've got something else to say. Because a lot of the time, IGLs, especially IGLs on Sentinel, have to lurk. They have to play their early round really importantly as a Sentinel, like especially Killjoy, getting your setup right, playing the early round correctly to get yourself in a good position. And you can't IGL as well in those times. So it's kind of quite a shared load. We've not got a second IGL, but I like the whole team to be able to communicate, is my kind of thing, is I want everyone talking.
Yeah, it kind of cancels out the need for that second IGL, right? If you know everyone's opinions are valued, then it comes in. I really like that, actually. Not allowance, not a really bad word. It's like, no, you shall not, but like encouraging the team to get more involved in it and to sit there and then put their ideas on the table of, like, if you suggest this is how we do something, and then someone sat there going, yep, that's great, but actually if we add this little part, that will just really turn the strategy up a notch, right? I like that, and I do rate that. Nice. So what is your favourite map?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna get why this was not on the questions you submitted to me before, Veggie. I'm gonna get so much hate for this. My favorite map is Fracture.
Yep. I thought that, to be fair.
Yeah, and it was before I joined Wraith. It was. It's always been my S tier. I've been roasted for my opinions on maps since I started caring about what maps exist in Valorant. Really, Haven and Fracture have always been at the top. Pearl as well. Even before the changes that are coming through, I still love the map of Pearl. I think yes, Plant B win is basically the strat, but the rest of the map outside of B is so well done. But yeah, I think to me, Fracture allows for. I think it's probably one of the most comp diverse maps, except for Lotus at the moment. And defender aggression is obviously very important, and you're expecting something like a breach to be there. But outside of that, and sometimes most people play Brim. Outside of that, there's a lot of room to play with, which I enjoy. I still think Neon is incredible on the map, but I think most people kind of moved away from that now. But
yeah, the kind of optic Neon is faded a little bit away, but you kind of get to see that on Lotus now. I think I've seen something the other day about how much, if you have a Neon in your team, especially at the higher echelon of the game, is like the win rate with Neon is like incredible compared to like the win rate without Neon, and it's massive.
It was I think it was over 90% win rate at one point. I don't know if it's still that now, but at one point it was kind of in the VCT Americas at least.
It's mostly them that are rocking the Lotus map, and it's like your Cloud9s and such that have brought that into fruition, right? But it's crazy. I had another really good question. Oh, that's it. I wanted to. So the last kind of tactical question, and before we kind of let you get on with your night, I wanted to bring it. You mentioned the updates that's coming to Peril. As a coach, how much do these updates kind of throw a complete spanner in the works that you're talking about? That's one of the maps that you came in and looked at. So the changes, although they're not like massive changes to the game, they do present a maybe not serious diversion, but a lot of differences to what the plays look like in terms of site control, right? How does that affect you going?
So I think, not to give away too much,
of course,
but I think in general, I think the way that I view the map hasn't really changed. B site is still, I think, the easiest post plant to have, even with the changes to the backside slope, or to the front side slope, I guess. I think doesn't change too much. Attacking the site itself is now going to be trickier, which is good. And that's hopefully going to bring some more kind of variation to the attack sides in general. I'm a bit upset that they didn't make any changes to aim main. To be honest, I think aim main could have also used some changes to make it slightly more desirable to be taking.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I like it. I think the changes are good, and the way that I view the map, and specifically defending the map, actually this feeds really well into the way that I view the map on defense. So I'm very excited to see how it plays. Yep. Obviously, you can sit there and look at the changes for as long as you want, and then all of a sudden someone will be like, "Oh, but if you do this Euro TP into this, I know you love Euro,
yes,
good. This Euro TP
I like that. Yes.
into this into this one little bit, and actually it's now can't be seen because of
Yep. Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of that kind of thing. Maybe not with Euro, but with chamber changes coming in.
Yes, that's my next question as well.
Yeah, and the Viper nerfs, beautiful.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know. I've just started enjoying watching a lot of Viper, and I know that sounds weird considering the meta that we're in. Yeah, but like it does seem like Riot have acknowledged that there's a very much like a double controller meta that really relies on that Viper, and it's kind of just going, nah, we don't want to see that. So the next part I was coming into there was about the chamber changes. Yeah. But as well as a hot topic now that's going about on Twitter is the rifle changes.
Yeah. Of course.
I need your opinion on this, because this will either get you cancelled by a lot of people or it'll get you accepted by a lot of people. I'm not a fan, but that's because I'm really bad at the game. So I'm allowed to say that. So
oh wait, okay. So are we going to do the rifles or chamber first?
We'll do rifles and then we'll finish with chamber. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think the rifle changes, I'm not a huge fan of them at a base level. I think it's a way to try and counter. I think it's a way to try and make teams not want to play double controller, but it also means that double controller is also stronger to play against, right? Yeah. So it's that really weird line that Riot are trying to walk. I think the full clip going, so it's one less full. It's 3 clips each now. Yeah,
it's kind of, you've got 60 in the Phantom instead of 90, and then the Vandal drops from 75 to 50, I think.
Yeah, so they lose 25% of their ammo.
Yeah,
we are going to see more Odins. If there's Sage Wall changes coming as well, or even without that, Sage Wall right now, if you're breaking it with a Phantom, you're using up a lot of your clip if it's fortified.
Yep.
Odins are going to be stronger on Sage maps. Odins are going to be stronger on a lot of other maps where you have double controller still. Like, I think Pearl is still being mostly double controller. Some teams will start to do just Astra, I think. But if we're expecting double controller, Odins will be picked up more, which I like the Odin, so that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, we have started seeing quite at least from a lot of the Valorant I've been watching lately, Odin has started to be something come through, but
bloody Chronicle.
Yeah, exactly. And it's especially on like your maps like Lotus where there is a lot of those wall banging points. But like for me, this update buffs Sage to be so strong.
Yes.
Like if it's fine if you can break that wall at the start of the round, it's not that big a deal, right? But I mean, there's only certain maps that you'll get that aspect on. Like if you're looking at split, like if you're going with that typical wall across B. I mean, even Haven, if your bot's walling up B on Haven, you shouldn't do that. But that's what some people would do. In my rank, that's what you're saying. So just stands there and puts that down. But like even like post plant situation, Sage, you see some of these stupid TikTok walls that have like 3 blocks that need to be broken just to get to the spike. Like how busted is that going to be? You just go up onto a wall and then everyone needs to put every magazine into it. Never mind shooting the enemies. Like
I think it's a bit. I think Riot probably wouldn't like the idea of cutting the clip in half, but I think going for half a clip less might have been okay.
Yeah,
for like depending on what they're aiming for, half a clip less might have been okay. But I think like it was similar when they were balancing the economy early in the game's life. They only ever balanced it around not including having the 50 credits kind of like marks, and now they added in the 50 credits. It's changed everything. I think it's made the economy better.
Yep.
I think they're looking at the rifles the same with the ammo. Is they're first looking off at the major kind of breakpoints, and then hopefully they'll add in half the clip back.
Yeah,
that's
maybe
my
like add like either like add the full clip back and take like 5 off of each magazine. Could be like the answer. Yeah, Means less spray. But okay, so Chamber. Do you think Chamber is going to come back into the game, and specifically, do you think Ye is going to be the best player in the world again?
I mean, with how disguised they've been looking since Ye joined, no.
Yeah, not the one. Yeah,
which is sad. I honestly think that team could have been really good, but that's a whole other question. I think the Chamber buffs in general are pretty good. I've always been of the opinion that Chamber is still viable. I think part of the reason the nerfs were as hard as they were was because Lotus was designed for Chamber. In my mind, Lotus was Lotus's Chamber's map. Like it's something I've not convinced Wraith to do yet, but hopefully with the changes I might be able to get Chamber.
Yeah, completely.
Maybe. Don't tell them that. I think the buffs overall are good. I think the change to the Tour de Force is good. I wish that they touched the Headhunter a bit. I think that's my only issue, is they didn't touch the Headhunter. Because I think that's still, unless you're Ye, not that worth it.
It's expensive to miss your shots, right?
And I mean, for me, I miss my shots a lot. I am a Chamber one trick in ranked. I will say that much. It's bad for a coach to say that, but the difference with me playing Chamber and not playing Chamber is quite evident by my tracker. Sadly,
that is what it is, right? You're the coach for the reason. You're not a player.
Exactly, and I can probably fill in if we happen to have a Chamber comp one day, but we don't. So, and I think bind as well. Chamber with the buffs also still going to bind, and potentially, I think the TP distance, or not the TP distance, the trip distance now as well on bind makes it a lot more viable to have it in short whilst you're in hookah, and vice versa. Which I think should be good.
Easier for control. Perfect. Cool. So we'll finish up there. Thank you very much for coming on. It's been incredibly insightful. But before we go, do you want to let the people know where they can find you and what you've got coming up?
Yeah, sure. So you can find my Twitter at EKOCasts. What I've got coming up, I've got obviously Wraith. Going to be with this team for a long time. Hopefully, we're going to be hitting that top 8 very, very soon. And like follow me on Twitter, and all the updates of what I'm up to will be there. A lot of it is not relevant to anything ever, but it's a lot of fun.
Such is life. Yeah, such is life. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and we'll head back to the studio. Once again, welcome back to the studio. I hope you amazing people of the internet enjoyed that interview as much as I did. It was certainly insightful, and I really hope you can get to see the sort of passion that EKO has and exactly what they bring to the team, and you can see why the team has success, right? I fully am invested myself, and I want to buy into it. So we'll have to see if EKO will ever come back on. But for now, we're going to talk about contenders just a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time on it, as it has been a little bit away, right? It's not like it was a most recent event. It's a little bit off. I'm living in the past ever so slightly, but we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about it. Game Changers EMEA Contenders Series 1 had concluded. It was a competition taking place from May the 24th to the 29th, with a €10,000 prize pool, which is a decent chunk of money. I mean, it's not something to be scoffed at for sure. Like we kind of discussed, it went from a Swiss-style format that anybody could enter into. It was over 3 days, so you had day 1, you played 3 games, day 2, you played 3 games, and I believe on day 4 was just the last game day for that Swiss-style, which was 1 game. Now, immediately after finishing that Swiss format, if you were lucky enough to be in... Now, this is where my memory's gone. I freaking forgot how many teams gone, and I had this down. But anyway, if you were lucky enough to get through into that, through the open qualifier, you jumped in the same day, and you had to go straight into the playoffs, which is it's kind of tough, right? You go from playing loads of best of ones, and then all of a sudden you're in a best of 3, which you might not be fully prepared for, right? You've not had time to kind of reset. Yes, you have the time in between your matches to kind of get ready, but you don't know who you're going up against, and you have to kind of play through that one. So you respect to every team that got into this position, and listen, if you went out early on, next time you go. But if you do go early on, you get the chance at the lower rounds, which is obviously where everyone likes to see the underdogs come up from. But I'm not going to spend too much time going through it. Ultimately, you have FUT Female coming in first place, Tiger and Ormo coming in at second, the A team coming in at third, and EX1 Nova, the winners of Birds of Prey, coming in at fourth. All that really matters from this is FUT Female and Tiger progress on to the next stage, which is Game Changers EMEA Stage 2, which is where you're going to have 16 teams placed into 2 groups of 8, fighting together in a single round of robin, best of 3 matches. So gone are the best of ones. That's out the window now. Best of 3s, and you're going to have to be coming up against a whole heap of talent. Now, everyone knows a lot of the teams in here. We have Nip Lightning that EKO spoke about. You've got Untapped. You've got CBA, the French side. You've got G2 Gozen, who are the current Game Changers champions, right? They previously won at main stage. We spoke about that slightly a minute ago, about how maybe they were drawing off of their LAN confidence to come onto this. You've got Ascend Rising, BBL Queens, another Turkish side, Navi, another Turkish side. So clearly a lot of Turkish game-changing talent to be on show. But one thing that I do want to kind of touch upon, and I know I'm not looking at the camera right now, but anyway, it's a podcast, who cares, is that Guild are a part of this competition right now, but they're losing 2 of their key players, which is Smurfette and Ness. So who they replace to bring into that is going to be a different one. And actually, are they just losing out the scene? Is something, if you know about this, let me know. Are they just leaving the scene? It'd be difficult. I feel like Smurfette and Ness are both really good players, and it's going to be tough players to sort of replace and kick off on to the next level with. But also where they both end up is going to be interesting. Do they end up at some of the teams that are already in this lineup, or are they going to take the step below and come through contenders for Series 3 and show us what they can do and really give us a surprise in that one? I say surprise, it's not really a surprise. They're good players, they're crack players. Anyway, I'm digging myself into a hole that I do not intend to be into, and we're just going to move past that, okay? It's going to be interesting to see where those 2 players end up. I'm expecting a lot, and there is quite a few sort of empty places on some of these rosters. If I can just bring it up again, we have CBA currently missing a player on Liquipedia. Nip Lightning, like I said, missing 2 players. So maybe, I mean, does Nip Lightning pick up both of them, or am I behind in the times and Nip Lightning's already picked people up? Who knows? My research isn't fantastic, so if you lovely people know, let me know, because that's, like I said, this is what this is all about. At the beginning, it's very much a me learning process alongside yourselves, and maybe bring you up to speed a little bit, and then who knows, maybe I'll surprise you and I'll be the one coming in with the insider information, giving you all this stuff, right? That's where this could end up. Who knows? That's the joys. But like I said, I don't really want to spend too long talking about Game Changers contenders, because we're going to be doing a special episode on that just before the competition starts, which is July 3rd to the 18th, and I'm going to be taking off who I believe the winners could be, who I believe the biggest losers could be, and also kind of everything that comprehends it. We'll be doing ones covering throughout contenders, just talking about the matches, talking about the results. We might even try and do some analytical work on why certain teams are winning and why certain teams aren't. But that is for now. And I'm excited to see where this scene can go. Obviously, at the minute, there's not many Scottish players on this. Ascend previously just losing Jade, so Ascend, I'm sorry, but I'm now no longer a fan. I'm now switched my alliance over to Alliance Coven, where you have Fluxy playing in this team. So that's said, if you want Veggie Hot Dog on your side, you've got to have some Scottish talent, okay? That's how it's got to be. It's just how I'll always be, and it's the way I will be, unless you have someone else that I personally know, and then of course I'll fully support you. So for me, I'm excited to see what Alliance Coven can bring to the table. Be looking out for Fluxy to perform some big shots and some big moments, and hopefully sort of push them on to that next level. But that will be all that anybody wrote for now. It's been Veggie Hot Dog. It's been Veggie's game-changing podcast. I hope you lovely people have enjoyed. And until next time, I am peacing out, and we'll see you on the flip side.